What if I told you that evolution doesn't care about you? Not your happiness, not your pain, not even your survival after you've reproduced. In fact, evolution is one of the most brutal, indifferent, and ruthless processes in the entire universe. And today, we're diving deep into the dark side of evolution that scientists rarely talk about. The uncomfortable truths that reveal just how cruel nature really is. By the end of this video, you're going to look at life, suffering, and even your own body in a completely different way. So buckle up, curiosity beasts, because what you're about to learn might disturb you. But it's the truth. Let's dive in. Evolution doesn't care about your suffering. Let me start with the most uncomfortable truth of all. Evolution has absolutely zero capacity to register your pain. It doesn't care if you're suffering. It doesn't care if you're terrified. It doesn't care if you're living in constant psychological distress. The only thing evolution cares about is one simple question. Did you survive long enough to reproduce? That's it. That's the entire game. If suffering increases your chances of survival or reproduction, evolution keeps it. If it doesn't interfere with reproduction, evolution ignores it completely. There is no corrective mechanism that removes pain just because it's excessive or unbearable. Pain exists because it's efficient. It forces you to change your behavior immediately. It makes you avoid danger. It strengthens your memory, so you don't make the same mistake twice. From evolution's perspective, pain isn't a problem to solve. It's a tool, a weapon. And whether that pain becomes chronic, disproportionate, or completely destructive to your quality of life, doesn't matter. As long as you can still reproduce, evolution considers it a success. This is why extreme suffering is so common in nature. Prey animals live their entire lives in constant fear. Their nervous systems are designed to overreact to every sound, every shadow, every movement. Why? Because failing to detect a real threat even once means death. So evolution builds them to be paranoid. Always. Forever. Predators aren't living easy lives either. They suffer frequent injuries. They go through long periods of starvation. They fight until they're covered in wounds. And parasites? They've evolved strategies that keep their hosts alive just long enough to extract every bit of resources, often causing prolonged, agonizing distress instead of a quick death. And you know what? These strategies persist because they work. Now let's talk about humans. You think we're exempt? Think again. Our stress and anxiety systems operate on the exact same brutal logic. Your fear response is designed to trigger instantly, not to resolve cleanly. Your nervous system assumes every threat is real until proven otherwise. In ancient environments, this kept you alive. But in the modern world, where threats are abstract, prolonged, and symbolic like deadlines, social media, financial pressure, the same system produces chronic anxiety, burnout, and actual physiological damage. And evolution? It doesn't recognize this as a failure. You're still alive, you can still reproduce. So the system stays exactly as it is. Evolution doesn't reward comfort. It doesn't reduce suffering once a trait works. Pain persists because it continues to serve survival, even when the cost is your mental health and quality of life. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever felt like your anxiety or stress is completely out of control? Because evolutionarily speaking, that's actually working as intended. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into the dark side of nature, hit that subscribe button because we're about to go even deeper. Evolution builds with duct tape, not engineering. Here's another brutal truth. Evolution doesn't design anything. It doesn't engineer elegant solutions. It just modifies whatever already exists. And once a biological system appears, every future change has to work around it instead of replacing it. This creates layers and layers of compromises that pile up over time. The result? Complexity without optimization. Function without efficiency. Systems that work just well enough to survive but are riddled with flaws. Let's talk about your spine. The human spine evolved from a structure designed for four-legged movement. When our ancestors started walking upright, evolution didn't redesign the spine from scratch. It just adjusted it. Vertebrae got stacked vertically. Discs started absorbing pressure they were never built to handle. Muscles had to compensate constantly just to keep you standing. The outcome? A structure that works, but degrades easily. Chronic back pain isn't some rare medical anomaly. It's a predictable consequence of evolution's sloppy modifications. Your back hurts because evolution said good enough and moved on. And it's not just your spine. Let's talk about your eyes. The human retina is wired backward. Light has to pass through layers of neural tissue before it even reaches the photoreceptors. This creates a literal blind spot in your vision and makes your eyes more vulnerable to damage. Other species evolved on this flaw. But humans? We inherited a legacy structure that evolution just patched together instead of fixing. The eye works well enough to see predators and find food, so the flaw stays forever. These inefficiencies aren't rare exceptions. They're standard. Evolution cannot erase its own history. Every new adaptation is built on top of what already exists, whether that foundation is good or terrible. A flawed system that functions beats a perfect system that requires rebuilding. What looks like poor design isn't incompetence. It's the inevitable result of a process that values continuity over perfection. Evolution is the ultimate, if it ain't broke, don't fix it philosophy. Except in this case, it is broke. We're just stuck with it. Harmful traits survive if you reproduce first. Now here's where it gets really dark. Evolution doesn't care when a trait causes harm, it only cares when. If a trait helps you reproduce early in life, it will persist even if it destroys you later. Natural selection has absolutely no mechanism to remove traits that only become dangerous after you've already passed on your genes. This is why so many genetic disorders still exist. Conditions that show up in middle age or old age are completely invisible to evolution. By the time they cause damage, your genes are already in the next generation. Mission accomplished. Evolution moves on. Sexual selection makes this even worse. Traits that attract mates often directly reduce survival. The peacock's tail is the classic example. It's heavy, it's bright. It makes the peacock an easy target for predators. It drains energy just to maintain, but it signals genetic fitness to potential mates, so it stays. Evolution prioritizes getting laid over staying alive. Humans follow the exact same pattern: risk-taking, aggression, impulsivity. These behaviors increase your chances of injury and death. But they also increase status, dominance, and mating opportunities. So evolution keeps them. The benefits happen early, the costs pile up later, and by then, evolution doesn't care. Anxiety, depression, chronic stress, none of these are accidents. Anxiety exists because being overly sensitive to threats is safer than missing a real one. Your nervous system would rather freak out over nothing 1,000 times than ignore one actual danger. The cost is a lifetime of hypervigilance and mental exhaustion. But evolutionarily, that's acceptable. Depression-like states aren't bugs either. Reduced motivation and social withdrawal conserve energy during loss or scarcity. These responses are adaptive when they're temporary. When they become prolonged and debilitating, evolution does nothing. The trait still works under certain conditions, so it remains. Evolution doesn't care about your mental health. It cares about keeping you alive long enough to reproduce. Psychological breakdown is fine as long as you made it that far. And look, I know this is heavy. So let me know in the comments, does knowing this change how you view your own struggles? Because understanding the why doesn't fix the problem, but it does help you see that you're not broken. You're just running ancient software in a modern world. Evolution rewards cruelty when it works. Let's get one thing straight. Evolution has no preference for kindness, fairness, or compassion. Those traits only exist when they increase survival or reproductive success. And when cruelty is more efficient, cruelty wins. Every single time. Predators don't evolve strategies to minimize suffering. They evolve strategies to maximize energy gain. Long chases that exhaust prey, intimidation tactics, eating prey alive instead of killing them first. These methods persist because they work, not because they're kind, because they're effective. Parasites are even worse. They evolve to extract resources while keeping their hosts alive as long as possible, often causing prolonged, agonizing distress. This isn't sadism, it's optimization. The parasite that kills its host too quickly loses its food source. So the cruelest strategy becomes the most successful. In social species, dominance hierarchies reduce constant physical conflict, but they create chronic stress for every individual that's not at the top. Lower-ranking animals live in a state of suppressed fear and submission. Evolution preserves this structure because group efficiency matters more than individual comfort. Even cooperation, the thing we like to think makes us noble, only exists when it benefits genetic continuity. Empathy strengthens alliances when resources are abundant, but the moment scarcity hits, empathy shuts off. Competition returns instantly. Evolution doesn't enforce moral consistency, it enforces situational advantage. Human morality evolved as a coordination tool, not an ethical principle. We cooperate when it helps us survive. We compete when we have to. There is no moral arc bending toward justice in evolution. There's only efficiency under pressure. Nature isn't cruel because it's evil. It's cruel because cruelty works. And evolution doesn't judge, it just selects winners. Stay with me, because we're about to talk about something even more disturbing. The genetic time bomb ticking inside all of us. Evolution never cleans up genetic damage. Here's a truth that should terrify you. Evolution has no maintenance phase. There is no biological process scanning your DNA and removing harmful, inefficient, or unstable traits just because they're bad for you in the long run. The only filter is whether a trait stops you from reproducing early enough to matter. Everything else, it stays. Forever. Mutations happen constantly during DNA replication. Most are neutral. Some are mildly harmful. Very few are immediately lethal. And evolution only removes the lethal ones. Everything else accumulates. Generation after generation. Many genetic problems are delayed. Some genes only activate under specific conditions like stress, aging, or environmental triggers. Others stay dormant for decades before causing symptoms. From evolution's perspective, these genes are invisible. They pass through bloodlines unchecked. Some traits persist specifically because they're useful early and destructive later. Strong inflammatory responses protect you from infections when you're young, but they increase your risk of autoimmune diseases and organ damage as you age. High hormone sensitivity improves growth and competitiveness early on, but destabilizes your metabolism later. Evolution keeps both outcomes because the benefit arrives first. The damage comes after reproduction, and by then, evolution has already moved on. Even severe inherited disorders survive if they don't completely block reproduction. Neurological conditions, cardiovascular diseases, connective tissue disorders, many of these manifest after reproductive age. Evolution registers you as successful regardless of what happens afterward. Over thousands of generations, this produces organisms optimized for early performance and structurally unstable later on. Aging isn't a programmed process, it's the visible accumulation of tolerated damage. Evolution doesn't preserve genetic integrity. It allows deterioration as long as the system works briefly. You are not built to last, you're built to reproduce. Everything after that is borrowed time. Competition becomes a self-destructive arms race. Evolution doesn't reward survival in a vacuum, it rewards outperforming others. And once competition gets intense, evolution escalates traits regardless of the cost. This creates biological arms races that spiral completely out of control. When one organism develops a competitive advantage, others must respond or die out. Each escalation increases energy demands, injury risk, and system strain. And evolution doesn't stop this. It only ends when physical limits are reached or extinction occurs. In mating competition, this becomes extreme. Traits that attract attention grow more and more exaggerated. Larger size, brighter colors, louder displays, greater aggression. Each tiny increase improves mating success slightly, but adds massive physiological burden. Many animals completely exhaust themselves during mating season. Some stop eating entirely. Others fight until they're severely injured or dead. Mortality spikes. But a few succeed in reproducing, and that's all evolution needs. Humans follow the exact same logic through social competition. Overwork, chronic stress, dominance behavior, risk-taking, all of these increase status and opportunity, but destroy your health. Evolution doesn't penalize burnout, heart disease, or mental collapse if reproduction or social success happens first. The competitive system doesn't aim to keep you healthy. It aims to select winners. And if you break yourself in the process, you're an acceptable loss. Evolution doesn't produce balance. It produces escalation until collapse becomes normal. If you're still watching, comment arms race below, because we're entering the final stretch and it only gets darker from here. Evolution has no breaks and no concept of too far. Here's the thing. Evolution doesn't know when to stop. There's no internal safeguard that says, okay, this trait has gone too far. Unless something causes immediate reproductive failure, evolution keeps pushing. Highly specialized organisms are walking disasters waiting to happen. When a species becomes perfectly optimized for one specific environment, even tiny changes can cause total collapse. Evolution doesn't preserve flexibility unless flexibility itself provides advantage. Complex systems are fragile. The more moving parts a system has, the more points of failure exist. But evolution still builds complexity when it gives short-term benefits. And when conditions shift, that complexity becomes a death sentence. This is why extinction is common. Species don't go extinct because they were weak. They go extinct because they were too optimized for conditions that no longer exist. Evolution offers zero protection against environmental change. And here's the kicker. There's no upward trajectory. Evolution allows regression when complexity becomes costly. Traits vanish, capabilities disappear. Intelligent sensory systems, structural features, all of it can be lost when it stops being immediately useful. Humans are not exempt. Our intelligence, technology, and social systems exist only because they currently provide advantage. If conditions change drastically, these traits can become burdens, and evolution will not preserve them out of respect or nostalgia. There's no safeguard against collapse. There's no final form. Evolution continues until it fails, and then it just moves on. Evolution only cares about right now. And here's the ultimate dark truth. Evolution is completely, utterly short-sighted. It doesn't plan, it doesn't anticipate, it doesn't protect long-term stability. Its only concern is whether a trait helps an organism survive and reproduce right now. Anything that doesn't interfere with reproduction is tolerated, no matter how catastrophic the long-term consequences. This is why so many species, including humans, are fragile over time. Traits that help early in life are preserved even when they wreck you later. Aging, disease, structural breakdown. These are natural byproducts of a system that stops caring after reproduction happens. Human physiology proves this. Our bodies evolved for hunting, running, fighting in youth. Evolution prioritized traits that worked for reproduction, not longevity. Your arteries, joints, and neurons were never optimized to last decades beyond reproductive age. That's why cardiovascular disease, arthritis, and cognitive decline are so common later in life. You weren't built to last. You were built to reproduce and pass it on. Behavioral traits follow the same ruthless pattern. Aggression, risk-taking, high metabolism, competitiveness. All of these boost early success but harm long-term health. Evolution tolerates the costs because immediate survival and mating matter more than durability. Even entire ecosystems operate under this short-term focus. Predator-prey cycles, resource crashes, mass die-offs. Evolution accepts all of it as natural. It doesn't maintain balance over decades. It only favors what works right now. Collapse is just part of the process. Humans have temporarily bypassed some of these limitations with technology, medicine, and planning. But evolution itself? Still indifferent. If conditions change drastically, the rules snap back instantly. Survival depends on reproduction first, not intelligence, not health, not preparation. In the end, evolution only protects the immediate moment. Longevity, stability, sustainability, all optional. Life continues not because it's strong or well-designed, but because it reproduces. That's it. That's the entire story. All right, curiosity beasts, if you made it this far, you've just stared into the dark heart of evolution itself. And honestly, the fact that we're all here, walking around, functioning at all, is kind of a miracle wrapped in chaos. So tell me in the comments, which dark truth hit you the hardest? Was it the fact that evolution doesn't care about your suffering? That your body is held together with biological duct tape? Or that everything you are was designed for short-term success, not long-term survival? And if this video made you see life differently, do me a favor, smash that subscribe button. Because here at the Curiosity Beast, we don't shy away from uncomfortable truths. We dive straight into them. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, you're not broken. You're just running on ancient code in a world it was never designed for. This is the Curiosity Beast. I'll see you in the next one.